Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame, and welcome to Yuji vs. Mahito, yeah! So today we're going to be comparing current Yuji in chapter 214 of the manga, because I don't think I need to talk about Yuji in 244. If you think that is a close fight, then please seek help. However, I'm going to talk about Yuji from chapter 214, and see if those Yujis can do decently well against Mahito, and see how the two of them do in a battle against each other. Now, thankfully, the two of them have actually pretty comparable stats, and it makes it a lot easier to compare them, unlike some other characters, where you actually have to, create backward scaling threads off characters for who they scale to, purely because Yuji and Mahito mainly fight each other for the time that Mahito is alive for, so Mahito's main scaling is off of Yuji directly, so that makes this a lot easier to talk about. Now, in terms of actual stats, like hand-to-hand combat, that type of stuff, Mahito scales relative, if not a bit above, 120% amped Yuji, which is the Yuji after he lands the Black Flash and the second Black Flash. The reason why that we know they scale relative is the fact that they're able to clash fists several times, and Yuji is able to deflect several of his hits during the fight. However, we know that Mahito's durability itself massively exceeds that of Yuji, considering the fact that Yuji's normal hits cannot reach Mahito, and only the Black Flash will actually be able to do damage against Mahito. Now, while Gege does directly say if Mahito didn't take the Black Flash before he transformed, he would have destroyed Yuji, it should also be noted, Yuji was by far and away the most injured of everyone in that fight, with Mahito earlier making a statement that Yuji was at 10% of his soul HP, and the only one who was actually doing damage to Mahito that entire time was Yuji beforehand. Todo can't actually hurt Mahito due to the fact that Mahito can only really be hurt by attacks that damage the soul. So we know speed-wise and attack potency-wise, Mahito is relative to the Yuji Itadori, who's only landed 2 Black Flashes, but he can get heavily injured by Yuji after he lands a 3rd Black Flash. However, Mahito's normal durability allows him to not feel hits from Yuji before he lands that 3rd Black Flash. Now, where does that compare to Yuji now? Well, Yuji Itadori was able to get stronger 4 separate times after this battle, where the first time he got stronger is because he lands another Black Flash on Mahito, which is equal to another 120% of his potential being pulled out. And we know Black Flash amps stack purely because of the fact that Mahito needed to land a 2nd Black Flash in order to transform into this form to begin with. He is then called a demon god in comparison to what he was before by Choso directly only when he's partially healed, and then he gets fully healed, so he should get even stronger after that. Then he gets a massive power amp after Sukuna is released from him. All of this is to say Yuji right now should most definitely be able to hit and hurt Mahito with his normal attacks. So if this was just a pure raw fist-to-cuff matchups, then normally Mahito would lose absolutely and heavily towards this much stronger Yuji. On top of that, Yuji is also much more durable in comparison to what he was before. Sukuna was expecting to wipe Yuji out and kill him with just one punch. However, Yuji ended up surviving and getting back up, so that one punch from Sukuna likely exceeds everything Mahito had done in the past. The reason that I say that is because Sukuna is very much aware of how strong Yuji is and what an attack needs in order to beat him, so Sukuna should be aware of how much power to put into an attack, so I do believe this powerful attack and this one punch Sukuna did should exceed Mahito's Black Flash he did on Yuji earlier that Yuji also survived. However, that's only talking really about striking strength. In order for this to actually be a debate, there are 2 questions that I believe need to be answered first up. Which the first question is, can Yuji still hurt Mahito now that Sukuna is no longer inside of his body? And the second question is, can Mahito's hexes be enough to overcome this massive difference in physical power, assuming Yuji can still hurt Mahito? So up first I'm going to go over the entire thing of can Yuji still affect the soul directly? And in my opinion, I do think Yuji is still able to affect the soul and directly hit Mahito. Now, I have a few reasons why I do believe this. Number 1, Mahito's reason for why Yuji is able to hit the soul very much implies that Yuji should still be able to hit the soul now that Sukuna is no longer inside of him. The reason that Mahito says that Yuji can hit the soul is because Yuji is a vessel, and because of the fact Yuji is aware of the fact he has 2 souls inside of his body, he is able to subconsciously hit the soul. The reason why Yuji should be able to still hit the soul is just because Sukuna is no longer inside of him doesn't mean Yuji should lose all of the knowledge that he gained and the ability to hit the soul to begin with. In other words, while Sukuna is the reason Yuji got the knowledge, Sukuna is not the reason Yuji is able to do it to begin with. Sukuna is only the pathway for Yuji to get that knowledge to begin with. And the second reason is purely because Yuji is able to use the soul book to begin with. I don't think you're actually able to teach soul awareness, or else Todo would have been able to hurt Mahito. And I know some of you guys might be like, okay, Todo's just not that smart. Todo is the same person who taught Yuji how to control his cursed energy properly to begin with, and he was already pretty in tune with his very soul to begin with, and even he still couldn't hurt Mahito, so I generally don't think it's something you can teach to begin with. So yeah, Yuji is still going to be able to hit the soul of Mahito. However, there's another thing that's up in debate, and another advantage that Mahito is going to have in this fight. Now that Sukuna is no longer inside of Yuji, Idle Transfiguration will work on Yuji again. However, this should be remembered, Idle Transfiguration is also not a guaranteed instant one-shot. For example, when Mahito was fighting against Nanami, he needed to land a total of 2 or 3 taps, in his own opinion, before he could actually fully transfigure Nanami. Or an even better example, when Mahito was fighting against Todo, he doesn't think he would be able to actually one-shot Todo in his current state because his soul is basically at 40% HP. So while I don't know the exact amount of taps is going to require Mahito in order to transfigure Yuji, I think it is very safe to say it should take more than 3. However, can Mahito's hexes overcome this massive distance in power? Now this is where I'm also going to start getting a little bit into the battle scenario itself, because I think talking about the battle scenario and where it's going to happen is very, very important. This battle will be happening in Shibuya Station. So let's talk about Mahito's arsenal a little bit. With Mahito's arsenal, he is able to change the shape and form of several people after he touches them. However, sorcerers require several touches, normal people only require about 1. Through this, he's able to do several things, such as turn humans into bombs in order to blind people, turn humans into walls, spikes, projectiles, swords, even combine several people through polymorphic soul isomer using soul multiplicity in order to make just several people combined into one in order to assist him in battle. However, they aren't really that durable. They're strong enough to send Todo flying, but at the same time they're weak enough in terms of durability to get one shot by Todo, so they're not going to be too much help. But Mahito's also able to change their form. He can go inside of them as well, use them for sneak attacks, etc. Mahito is just very creative with how he uses them. However, Idle Transfiguration also allows Mahito to alter his own form. While we're going to start him in his transformed state, that's not the only state he can enter into. He can grow wings, he can get faster through giving himself horse legs instead. However, it's not applied to be that much faster. He is also able to change himself into blades, change his arms into massive chainsaw blades, etc. The sky is the limit when it comes to what Mahito is capable of doing through shapeshifting. In his transformed state, he's also able to focus certain parts of his body in order to make them more durable, which is what he does directly against Yuji by making half of his body more durable in exchange for the other half being completely exposed. Finally, he has access to his domain expansion, where through his domain expansion he can constantly use Idle Transfiguration on a person. And it should be noted, cursed energy can still be used to defend yourself inside of a domain. Mahito's sure hit inside of the domain is basically 120% amped, and even if Yuji can survive one touch, if he activates the domain, it's basically game over for anyone who's fighting against Mahito. Furthermore, Mahito is also able to cast a 0.2 second domain, where his domain expands for a total of 0.2 seconds. However, are any of these hacks going to be enough in order to beat the now massively stronger, faster, and more durable Yuji, or is he going to get pummeled into the ground? Well, I have a few scenarios that we're going to go through for this versus battle, and some win cons for both of them, surprisingly enough. Now, the first scenario I have in mind is basically what I imagine would actually happen being a normal scenario, where Mahito is not immediately aware of the fact Sukuna is no longer present inside of Yuji, so he immediately goes in for hand-to-hand combat on Yuji, thinking that's the best move and scenario for him, and only to immediately get destroyed and stomped. If you guys couldn't tell by how I was talking earlier on, Yuji just massively outscales Mahito completely, because while Mahito in terms of physical strength and speed scales slightly above Yuji in the past, Yuji has gotten much stronger up to this point. And while Mahito has gotten much more durable, I do think Yuji is going to straight up chip away at Mahito and kill him before Mahito gets the chance to do anything else, especially with this massive power and speed difference that exists now in Yuji in comparison to what was before. However, I don't think this should have been a surprise for any of you. Even Mahito himself notes the dangers of directly going against a weaker Yuji in terms of hand-to-hand combat, albeit he didn't have his transformed state, but Mahito knows directly the dangers of going against Yuji in hand-to-hand combat. So this much stronger Yuji absolutely destroying Mahito in hand-to-hand is likely no surprise. Now, the next scenario I have in mind is basically one where Mahito actually keeps his distance and occasionally goes in for direct hits, Because this should be noted, Mahito using range attacks or transfigured humans will not be enough to damage Yuji up to this point. His main and only Wicon will be using idle transfiguration on Yuji, so he's going to need to in order to get Yuji off guard so he can land several pats on Yuji before he quickly moves away. That's going to be Mahito's main way of winning. However, it's only going to be a way of stalling to inevitably the third scenario, or a scenario where Yuji wins, catching Mahito and finally catching him off guard and being able to beat Mahito in scenario 1 like he did before, where Yuji ends up beating Mahito in just pure hand-to-hand combat. Now, this next scenario is Mahito's main Wicon, which is literally just him expanding his domain. Now, unfortunately, Yuji currently doesn't have a way around the domain. Even though Yuji should take several touches in order for his soul to be transfigured, it is not going to be immediate, but Yuji is going to end up losing nonetheless because of Mahito's domain. In Mahito's domain, he's going to get the situation where he can land as many touches without transfiguration as he need, and he's going to be able to transfigure Yuji's soul away so he can finally get the kill on Yuji. However, this is all assuming that he's A, fast enough to even cast the domain against Yuji, B, smart enough to be able to know when the time is to cast the domain, and C, survive for long enough. Because if Yuji is able to kill him before Mahito can realize he needs to cast his domain in order to win, Mahito loses. However, I just don't see this being very likely to happen in most situations, purely because of the type of fighter Mahito is, especially when it comes to being around Yuji, and Mahito's love of absolutely breaking Yuji and destroying his soul. He's not the type to immediately go for using the domain against Yuji. He likes to break him, he likes to destroy him, so I don't see that being very likely of a scenario to happen. However, it is Mahito's only Wicon that I see being possible for Mahito. This is all without talking about the possibility that Yuji might land a Black Flash in this fight, which is something he should be able to do, because it's not Sukuna. So Yuji's not going to be so pissed off out of his mind that he won't be able to think properly on using the Black Flash and control himself properly enough to use the Black Flash. Furthermore, he will also sell the Divergent Fist as well, which is extremely useful for catching Mahito off guard, especially considering the fact after the Mahito fight, Yuji is able to control the Black Flash at will, directly stated by the narrator themselves. So if Yuji really needs to end the fight, it's possible that he could just land the Black Flash, and it's much more in character for Yuji to land the Black Flash than anybody else, considering Yuji is by far and away the most skilled user of the Black Flash in current day. So while Mahito has a lot of hacks, and he actually does have a Wicon in his domain, I just don't see it being likely that Mahito is going to win, purely because Mahito likes to explore and he likes to experiment with his fights. Mahito's personality is going to be his ultimate downfall in this battle, because Mahito does have a Wicon in his domain, but it's not going to be in character for him to activate his domain. However, if you want to give Mahito a win just because he actually does have a way to win through his domain and Yuji doesn't have a way to counter the domain, then congrats, you have your Mahito Wicon. However, if Mahito doesn't have his domain, basically in every other scenario, Yuji kind of completely destroys him. However, that's just my opinion on this fight and who I actually think wins. Just remember, you guys voted on this because I did put a poll out on whether I should do this fight or fight against someone else. I might still do Toji versus Mahito. I don't know. I really want to see what you guys think in the comment section down below. I very specifically didn't mention any Toji scaling in this video, purely because I didn't feel like including that if I actually did want to make a Toji versus Mahito vid. However, I'm going to see y'all later. Have a good day. Peace out.